What if I told you that what happened in Miami was not just a win, not just a dominant scoreline, not even just another final on the calendar? What if I told you we were watching, in real time, how one man is quietly rewriting the rules of football in the United States while the rest of the world is still trying to understand how this is even possible? Because what Inter Miami has become does not fit into any previous logic. And honestly, maybe by now it shouldn't surprise us anymore. For years, football in the United States was treated as a secondary story, a developing market, a league people watched with curiosity, sometimes with respect, often with condescension. A place where footballers went at the end of their careers, not to define them. A place of comfort, not pressure. Entertainment, not legacy. That reality no longer exists. Today, the epicenter of American football has a name: Lionel Messi. And what happened in Miami is just another massive chapter in a story that refuses to end. Not long ago, Inter Miami was a club without direction, a young project trying to find its identity. 2 seasons ago, they were buried at the bottom of the league, irrelevant, struggling, invisible in the bigger picture. They were a team people barely talked about, let alone feared. Now, that same club is a finalist. Not by chance, not by marketing, by football. And the image that has already traveled around the world says everything. Messi lifting another trophy in the United States at 38 years old, with a calm, almost frightening naturalness, as if winning, wherever he goes, were simply part of his routine. Standing next to him are 2 familiar faces: Jordi Alba, Sergio Busquets, former teammates, former Barcelona pillars, players many thought were finished, slow, outdated, disconnected from elite football. There is something deeply ironic about that. The so-called finished players, the veterans, the ones who supposedly came here to slow down, are now dominating an entire league. As if time, instead of catching them, decided to give them a second life. The match itself was a celebration. A spectacle. Tadeo Allende took the spotlight with a historic hat trick. But behind every goal, there was an invisible signature. A style that feels familiar to anyone who watched Barcelona at its peak. Alba assisting as if he never left Europe. Busquets distributing the ball with that cold, surgical calm he never lost. And Messi being Messi. Another assist. Number 405 of his career. A number that no longer feels human. A number that keeps pushing him closer to the absolute assist record in the history of world football. But what truly gives this story its unique flavor is the context. Inter Miami had never reached an MLS final. Never. In their first 5 seasons, they couldn't even get past the early rounds. They were a likable project, but an irrelevant one. Everything changed in 2023. 11 matches without a win. Then Messi arrived. From that moment on, pink stopped being just a color. It became a global symbol. That night at Chase Stadium was a show on its own. Carlos Alcaraz, world #1 in tennis, handing the trophy to Messi. Stars of the U.S. women's national team approaching just to see him up close. Cameras, flashes, celebrities everywhere. All of this for an MLS semifinal. Could anyone have imagined this 5 years ago? No one. Absolutely no one. Javier Mascherano, now Inter Miami's coach, summed it up perfectly with a phrase rooted deeply in Argentine football culture. The strength of a group can overcome almost anything. And that is exactly what happened. A group that once looked lost found its identity, its pride, and its leader. Of course, not everything is resolved. The final waits. Vancouver victories. A rival that not only defeated Miami before, but humiliated them. A painful 5-1 loss in the CONCACAF tournament. That wound is still open. That ghost is still there. The real challenge now is whether the Messi effect can also rewrite unfinished business. Because if football history has taught us anything, it's this: Messi never plays to close chapters. Messi plays to open them. And while the United States vibrates, the MLS is undergoing a silent but inevitable transformation. A league that was once seen as a final destination is becoming a stage for new epics. Messi, 8-time Ballon d'Or winner, World Cup champion, could be chasing his 48th career title. And the most remarkable part is how he does it. With hunger, with desire, with that internal fire that turned him into a legend in the first place. So the question becomes unavoidable. Are we witnessing the birth of a new era in the MLS? Or are we simply watching, once again, how Messi turns the ordinary into the extraordinary? Because one thing was made clear that night. When Messi plays, football stops being just a sport. It becomes a story that moves people, that surprises, that sparks debate, a story that keeps growing, a story that still has many pages left to be written. But if we truly want to understand the magnitude of what is happening in Miami, we have to look beyond the result, beyond the trophy, even beyond Messi himself. Because this revolution is not just sporting. It is cultural, economic, media-driven. The United States has never seen anything like this, and it might never see it again. For years, the MLS brought in famous names at the tail end of their careers. Big reputations, far from their best level. Now, football itself is traveling to the United States to watch. All because Messi decided to wear a pink shirt. What was once a slow-growing league has turned into a global spectacle where every match feels like a final. Attendance exploded. Ticket prices multiplied. Every Inter-Miami game became an event people brag about attending. This is not accidental. This is what happens when culture, sport, and global attention collide. And that combination, only Messi creates it. But perhaps the most fascinating transformation is internal. Not just Alba, not just Busquets, the young players, the ones who grew up watching Messi on television, the ones who now share a locker room with him. Allende, Cremaschi, Ruiz, players who 2 years ago could never have imagined this reality. Today, they're learning directly from the greatest of all time. And that detail explains more than any statistic ever could. Messi is not just a football leader. He is a school. And this is where a key concept emerges. Inter-Miami no longer plays for Messi. They play with Messi. That difference is everything. The team found order, rhythm, identity. Messi is the main piece, but he's not the only one. That's why the team works. That's why others score. That's why Busquets looks younger. Because Messi doesn't just change matches. He changes dynamics. There is another element few people talk about. Pressure. Real pressure. Messi was supposed to come to the US to relax, to play with less intensity, to enjoy football. Instead, the pressure multiplied. Not imposed, generated. Because when Messi is on the field, nobody wants to play at 80%. Everyone gives 110, and that standard naturally pushes you toward decisive moments. So this final is not luck. It is not marketing. It is consequence. And now the question echoes everywhere. What happens if Messi wins the MLS? What does that mean for the league? For his legacy? For the global perception of American football? If he does, he doesn't just break a sporting barrier. He breaks a cultural one. A league once mocked becomes a place where the greatest player in history came not to retire, but to keep winning. That is the paradox. Messi did not come to the United States to fade away. He came to expand his story, to conquer new ground, to prove that greatness does not depend on geography. And while the world watches, from Argentina to Japan, from Europe to the Middle East, each time Messi touches the ball, global attention ignites. League doesn't matter. Stadium doesn't matter. Only the story does. That's why the final against Vancouver is not just a match. It is a test, a turning point, a chance for Inter-Miami to write the most important chapter in its history. And for Messi to add another line to a resume that already feels unreal. So here's the final question, the one that connects everything. If this is what Messi achieved in just a year and a half, what happens when the project is complete? When the squad is fully built? When preseason, planning, and structure align from day one? Maybe we are only seeing the beginning.